Nia was a simple, kind young woman from Lusaka, the kind of person who helped everyone but rarely got help herself. During her nursing internship, she met Kwame. Gentle, humble, hardworking. He wasn't rich, but he made her feel safe, seen, and loved. Every evening after her hospital shift, he'd wait outside with a small smile and a bottle of mango juice, saying, "You look tired, my nurse. Let's walk home." But at home, Nia had no peace. Her stepmother, Miriam, couldn't stand her. She'd sneer whenever Nia passed by. "You're the mistake my husband couldn't hide," she'd hiss, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Nia tried to ignore it, focusing on her work and her dreams with Kwame. She believed love could survive anything. She was wrong. One night, as she walked past Miriam's room, she froze. She heard her name and Kwame's. Peeking through the half-open door, her blood ran cold. Miriam was talking to her spoiled daughter, Tasha. "Kwame has potential," Miriam said. "You'll marry him, not that useless Nia. Leave the rest to me." Nia's hands trembled as she covered her mouth. She couldn't believe it, her own family plotting against her. Within weeks, Miriam began her cruel plan. She faked messages, photos, lies that made it look like Nia was cheating with another man. She even sent them to Kwame. When Nia tried to explain, he wouldn't listen. His eyes were full of pain. "I thought you were different, Nia," he whispered. "How could you do this to me?" He left her standing in the rain that night, heartbroken and speechless. 2 months later, she heard the wedding bells. Kwame had married Tasha. Nia stood quietly at the back of the church, hidden behind the last row of chairs. Her hands clutched the edge of her dress as she watched them exchange vows. Everyone clapped and smiled, but she couldn't hear a thing, only the sound of her own heart breaking. And in that moment, with tears streaming down her face, she realized something. The people she loved most had destroyed her, and she was now completely alone. After Kwame's wedding, Nia's life fell apart piece by piece. Her stepmother Miriam made sure of it. She threw Nia out of the house, shouting, "Go find a man to cheat with, not under my roof." Nia begged her father to say something, but he just stood there, silent, eyes on the floor. That silence broke her more than the insults ever could. With nowhere to go, Nia started sleeping in the hospital storeroom where she worked night shifts. The room was cold and smelled of disinfectant, but it was all she had. At night, she'd curl up on a folded blanket between boxes of medical supplies, whispering to herself, "This is not the end." Sometimes she cried quietly until her eyes burned, then wiped her face and went back to work as if nothing had happened. But Miriam wasn't done. She started spreading lies around the neighborhood and the hospital. "That girl's unstable," she told anyone who would listen. "She's obsessed with Kwame." She even tried to crash their honeymoon. Soon, people began looking at Nia differently, with pity, with judgment. Some of her co-workers avoided her. Even patients whispered behind her back. Still, Nia kept her head down. She worked extra shifts, saved every coin, and told herself she would leave Lusaka behind someday. But deep down, the betrayal still burned. Every time she walked past a couple holding hands, her chest ached. Every time she saw Tasha's pictures on social media, smiling beside Kwame, she felt a sharp pain, not just of lost love but of injustice. One evening, after another long shift, she sat on a hospital bench watching the sunrise. The golden light hit her face, and something inside her shifted. For the first time in months, she didn't cry. She just whispered, "They took everything from me, but they won't take my future." 2 weeks later, she packed her few belongings. 2 old suitcases, a worn notebook, and a pair of shoes she had fixed with glue. She bought a one-way ticket to Nairobi. As the bus rumbled out of Lusaka, Nia looked out the window at the fading city lights. Her heart was heavy, but there was a quiet fire inside her, a determination that even pain couldn't kill. The road ahead was long, full of uncertainty, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She thought of all the nights she slept on cold floors, all the lies she endured, and all the love she lost. Then she smiled through her tears and whispered, "One day, they'll all see who I truly am." The wind blew through the cracked bus window, brushing against her face like a promise. Nia didn't know what waited in Nairobi, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never be the broken girl they left behind again. Life in Nairobi was not easy for Nia at first. She arrived with nothing but 2 suitcases, a small amount of money, and a heart full of hope. The city was fast, loud, and unforgiving, but Nia refused to give up. She found a small job as a caregiver in a local clinic, taking care of elderly patients and new mothers. She worked long hours, sometimes skipping meals so she could save a few shillings. Yet even in her struggle, Nia's kindness stood out. She had a way of making people feel seen. When a scared mother came in to give birth, Nia held her hand through every contraction. When an old man couldn't afford his medicine, she found a way to cover the cost from her own pocket. Her compassion spread quietly, and soon people at the clinic began calling her the girl with the healing heart. At night, Nia studied online. Her dream was to become a public health specialist. She took free courses, watched videos, and spent hours reading research papers on her old phone. One day, her supervisor noticed her dedication and introduced her to Dr. Amari, a respected public health expert from Kenya. Dr. Amari saw something rare in Nia: strength built from pain, purpose born from betrayal. She became Nia's mentor, guiding her, encouraging her, and helping her apply for a scholarship. When Nia received the acceptance letter, she cried quietly in her small apartment. It was the first good news she'd had in years. With Dr. Amari's help, Nia began working on an idea close to her heart, helping poor women get access to safe maternal care. She called her project Healing Hands Africa. It started small, just a few volunteers and one borrowed office room. But her passion drew people in. She spoke to communities, raised funds online, and traveled to villages where no doctor had been in years. Years passed, and Nia's name began to spread. She spoke at health summits, trained nurses, and built partnerships with hospitals. Her NGO grew across countries, saving countless mothers and babies. Reporters started calling her the miracle nurse from Lusaka. At an international conference in Cape Town, Nia stood on stage, speaking confidently about women's health and resilience. Her eyes sparkled as the audience gave her a standing ovation. In that moment, she remembered all the nights she slept in storerooms, all the tears she cried in silence, and the cruel words Miriam once said, "You're a mistake." Now the world saw her strength, the same strength that woman once mocked. Nia smiled softly to herself. She had turned her pain into purpose, and her scars into light. The girl they tried to destroy had become the woman everyone admired. Back in Lusaka, life was nothing like Kwame had imagined. The woman he thought was his perfect wife, Tasha, turned out to be nothing like Nia. At first, she acted sweet, always smiling, always calling him my love. But that sweetness didn't last long. As soon as the wedding glow faded, Tasha showed her true colors. She spent money like water, throwing parties almost every weekend, buying designer clothes, expensive wigs, and flashy cars. Kwame, who worked hard every day to build a decent life, tried to reason with her. "Tasha, we can't keep spending like this," he said one evening as he checked the bills. She just rolled her eyes and laughed. "Don't be boring like that poor nurse you used to date. I deserve nice things." Those words stung. Deep inside, Kwame felt a sharp ache whenever Nia's name came up. Though Tasha mostly mentioned her to insult him, he told himself he made the right choice, that Nia was gone, that this was his life now. But each day the house felt colder, emptier, even with all the luxury. Miriam made things worse. She was in their home constantly, acting as if she owned it. Every decision, from what food they ate to how the furniture was arranged, had to go through her. If Kwame ever disagreed, she'd snap, "You married my daughter, not the other way around. You obey my rules." Sometimes Kwame would sit quietly in his car outside their gate, just to delay walking into the chaos. He missed peace, the kind of calm he once felt when he and Nia sat under the mango tree sharing snacks and dreams. Now his days were full of arguments, his nights full of silence. Soon rumors began to spread. Friends whispered that Tasha was seen out late with other men, at clubs, in hotels, in expensive cars. At first, Kwame refused to believe it. But one night he found proof, a message on her phone from a man named Jonas, calling her my queen. His hands shook as he read it. When he confronted her, Tasha just smirked. If you were half the man he is, maybe I wouldn't need someone else, she said coldly. Kwame stood there, heart pounding, staring at the woman he once loved. He realized then that he had been living a lie built by Miriam and her daughter. He had traded real love for illusion, and now that illusion was destroying him. Over time, even Miriam grew tired of pretending. She started shouting at Kwame too, blaming him for Tasha's unhappiness. "You're useless," she screamed. "If Nia could attract you, anyone could." Kwame barely spoke anymore. The light in his eyes faded, replaced by regret. Every morning, he looked at his reflection and saw a man trapped, a man who once had everything pure and good, and threw it away because of lies. He thought of Nia often, wondering where she was, if she had moved on, if she ever forgave him. The thought haunted him every day, that he had destroyed the only person who truly loved him, and now, he was the one living in the ruins. The city of Lusaka buzzed with excitement that week. Billboards and radio shows were all talking about the upcoming Regional Health Summit, a grand event hosted by Healing Hands Africa and sponsored by the Ministry of Health. Big names, wealthy families, and business owners were all invited. Among them were Miriam and her daughter Tasha, who had recently launched a beauty and skincare brand. They proudly told everyone they'd been invited as honored guests. Tasha spent days planning her outfit, a glittering gold dress and diamond earrings. Miriam couldn't stop bragging. "See, my daughter is finally getting the recognition she deserves," she told her friends. Deep down though, she still enjoyed putting Nia's name down whenever she could. "That foolish girl could never reach this level," she often said with a smirk. The day of the summit arrived. The grand hall shimmered with elegant lights and soft music. Business leaders and government officials filled the seats. Tasha and Miriam sat near the front, smiling confidently, taking selfies, and waiting for the keynote speaker to walk in. Then the host's voice echoed through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, the founder and director of Healing Hands Africa, Ms. Nia Tembo." For a moment time stopped. The hall went completely silent. Tasha froze mid-sip, her glass shaking in her hand. Miriam's jaw dropped. The crowd turned as a tall, graceful woman walked onto the stage. Wearing a sleek white suit, her posture calm, her smile radiant. It was Nia. Not the quiet, broken girl they once mocked, but a confident, respected woman, glowing with success and grace. Tasha whispered under her breath, "Is that Nia?" Miriam's voice trembled. "Impossible." Everyone rose to their feet, clapping as Nia took the microphone. Cameras flashed. Ministers nodded in respect. The same Nia who once slept in storerooms and was called a mistake, now stood in front of leaders and dignitaries as the face of change. From the stage, Nia saw them, Tasha and Miriam, sitting pale and stunned. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, calm and poised, and began to speak. She talked about women's health, dignity, and the power of perseverance. Every word carried both pain and power. People listened in silence, inspired. Miriam fidgeted, tugging at her shawl. Tasha's forced smile faded completely. They realized they were sitting in a hall celebrating the woman they had once destroyed, and now the world admired her. When the speech ended, the entire audience stood and applauded. Nia bowed gracefully, her eyes glistening. Tasha leaned toward her mother and whispered, "We have to leave." But Miriam couldn't move. Her hands were trembling too much. The girl they once threw away had risen higher than they could ever dream, and that realization hit harder than any punishment. Nia had won, not through revenge, but through becoming everything they said she never could be. As Nia stood at the podium, the room fell silent. The lights shone softly on her face, and the logo of Healing Hands Africa glowed behind her. She looked calm, composed, but inside her heart was full. Not of anger, not of revenge, but of peace. She took a deep breath, looked around the hall filled with dignitaries, cameras, and powerful people, and began to speak. Her voice was gentle but strong. "Forgiveness," she said, "isn't weakness. It's choosing peace when you have every reason to fight. It's standing tall after the world tries to break you." The audience leaned forward, completely drawn in. She went on to share her story, not with names but with truth. She spoke of a young woman who was betrayed by the people she loved, who lost everything, who slept in storerooms and cried herself to sleep. But she didn't stay broken. She rebuilt her life, found her purpose, and turned her pain into something that helped others. Every word hit like a quiet storm. The crowd listened in awe, some with tears in their eyes. Miriam and Tasha sat frozen in the front row. They knew exactly who the story was about, and who it was meant for. Nia never looked directly at them, but every sentence felt like a mirror reflecting their own cruelty back at them. When she finished, the hall erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, shouting her name. Nia smiled humbly and bowed her head. For the first time, she didn't feel like the broken girl they once mocked. She felt powerful, free, and complete. After the speech, the Minister of Health approached her with a wide smile. "Ms. Nia," he said proudly, "your organization's proposal was excellent. Healing Hands Africa has a vision we want to support long-term. I'm signing the partnership today." The audience clapped again, flashes from cameras lighting up the stage. Nia thanked him warmly and accepted the signed document. The moment felt like a dream, but it was real. All her years of hard work had finally paid off. Meanwhile, just a few seats away, Miriam's face went pale. Tasha's hands shook as she whispered, "Mama, wasn't that the same contract we applied for?" Miriam didn't answer. She couldn't. Her forced smile faded completely as the minister continued speaking. "We appreciated Nia's honesty," he said into the microphone, "especially her decision to exclude exploitative partners from her project list. That integrity is what this nation needs." The crowd cheered again. Nia smiled graciously, but inside, her heart ached with quiet justice. She hadn't needed to expose them. Truth had done it for her. Across the room, Miriam's face twisted in disbelief. The humiliation was complete and public. The daughter she once called a mistake had become the pride of the nation, while her own daughter sat drowning in shame. As Nia walked off the stage, the applause still echoing, she passed by them. She didn't stop, didn't gloat, she simply gave a calm, knowing smile. That moment said it all. She had forgiven them, yes, but she would never forget. A few days after the summit, Nia sat in her bright, glass-walled office, reviewing project files for Healing Hands Africa. The phone rang non-stop. Journalists wanted interviews, organizations wanted partnerships. Her story had inspired thousands. She had no idea that outside, a sleek black car had just pulled up. Miriam and Tasha stepped out, dressed in their best clothes, wearing forced smiles. For the first time in years, they were nervous about meeting the very woman they used to insult. As they entered the building, the receptionist greeted them politely but with a hint of curiosity. Everyone knew who they were. When they reached Nia's office, Miriam straightened her scarf, forcing her voice to sound sweet. "My dear Nia," she said, stepping forward with fake warmth, "you look so successful. We're so proud of you." Nia stood up slowly, calm and professional. "Mrs. Miriam." "Tasha." She greeted them with a polite nod. Her tone was respectful but distant. Tasha gave an awkward laugh. "We just wanted to say congratulations. You've really made a name for yourself. I was thinking maybe our brand and your NGO could collaborate. You know, women empowering women." Nia looked at her quietly for a moment. Then Miriam jumped in, pretending to sound affectionate. "Yes, my dear. We're family. Let's leave the past behind. It's time to work together." Nia's calm expression didn't change. She gently placed her pen down, folded her hands, and said in a steady voice, "Family doesn't steal love or dignity." The room went silent. Miriam's smile froze. Tasha shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Nia continued, "I wish you well in your business. But Healing Hands doesn't partner with people who exploit or deceive. Please understand, this meeting is over." She stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Her voice wasn't angry, it was calm, almost kind. That made it even more powerful. Miriam's face turned red with embarrassment. Tasha tried to say something, but Nia had already turned back to her desk. The security guard politely escorted them out. That night, as the city went to sleep, news broke across every major media outlet. A leaked investigation report revealed that Tasha's beauty company had been evading taxes and using fake ingredients in its products. Customers started demanding refunds. Distributors cut ties overnight. Within 48 hours, the brand that once bragged about luxury was finished. Miriam tried to make calls to her old connections, but no one answered. Tasha cried in frustration, throwing her phone across the room. This can't be happening. We just needed one partnership, one chance. But it was too late. The internet was flooded with videos of angry customers, hashtags calling for boycotts, and pictures of their products being pulled from shelves. Meanwhile, Nia sat quietly in her apartment, sipping tea as she watched the news. She didn't smile or celebrate, she just whispered softly, "What's done in darkness always finds the light." For years, they had tried to destroy her reputation. Now their own lies had destroyed theirs, and Nia didn't have to lift a finger. One rainy evening, as the city lights shimmered on the wet roads, Nia sat in her office reviewing reports. The building was quiet, only the soft hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Suddenly, there was a hesitant knock on her door. When she looked up, her breath caught for a second. It was Kwame. He looked nothing like the confident man she once knew. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes red from sleepless nights, and there was a heaviness in his expression, the kind that only guilt could bring. "Nia," he began, his voice trembling, "please, just hear me out." She didn't say anything, just gestured toward the chair across from her. He sat down, clasping his hands like a man who had run out of pride. "I was a fool," he said. "They told me things, lies. Miriam showed me fake messages, forged letters. She made me believe you were cheating, that you were using me. I didn't even question it. I just left you." Nia's eyes glistened, but her voice remained calm. "And you never thought to ask me?" "Not once." Kwame swallowed hard. "I was weak, I was scared, and I let them ruin everything we had. Every night since then, I've hated myself for it." His voice broke as he whispered, "I was a coward, Nia." For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the rain tapping against the window broke it. Finally, Nia spoke, her tone soft but steady. "I forgave you long ago, Kwame. I had to, for my own peace." His eyes lifted, hope flickering for a second. "Then, maybe we can start again." She looked at him with gentle sadness. "Forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. What we had died the day you chose their lies over my truth." Her words landed like quiet thunder, not angry, just final. Kwame nodded slowly, tears rolling down his cheeks. "I understand." He stood up, hesitated at the door, and looked back one last time. Nia gave a small, bittersweet smile, not of love but of closure. When he left, the rain outside grew heavier, as if the sky itself was washing away the past. Kwame walked into the storm, finally free of guilt, but painfully aware that he had come back too late. Nia sat back in her chair, eyes on the window, whispering softly to herself, "Some endings are the peace we never knew we needed." Months later, the winds had shifted completely. The proud and untouchable Miriam was now a woman on the edge. Her mansion, once filled with laughter, luxury, and expensive perfumes, now stood cold and empty. The tax authorities had sealed the gates, and neighbors whispered as officers carried out furniture, jewelry, and files. Every ounce of pride she had built came crashing down. When she received a letter from the ministry announcing a property hearing, Miriam's anger exploded. She stormed into the government building, her heels clacking against the marble floor, her once perfect hair now undone. "This is ridiculous," she shouted to the clerk. "This house is mine. You can't just take it." The clerk quietly pointed to the hearing room. "Please, madam, take your seat. The new owner will be announced shortly." Miriam pushed open the doors, ready to fight. But the moment she stepped inside, her heart froze. Sitting at the front table, confident and calm in a tailored white suit, was Nia. For a moment time stopped. Miriam blinked hard, thinking her eyes were deceiving her. But no, it was truly her. Nia, the same woman she had humiliated, expelled from her home, and called a disgrace. Miriam's voice cracked. How is this possible?" Nia turned to her slowly, her face serene. The bank auctioned the estate, she said simply. I placed the highest bid. The words hit Miriam like lightning. She stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a chair. You bought my house. Nia nodded. No, I bought my peace. The room went silent. Even the officials looked stunned. Nia continued, her tone soft but steady. You once told me I would never stand on your level. But the truth is, I never needed to. I just needed to stand again. Miriam's legs gave way. She collapsed into a chair, shaking her head as tears filled her eyes. The memory of every cruel word, every moment of mockery, came rushing back. She had mocked Nia for having nothing, and now Nia owned everything. As the papers were signed, Nia stood and extended her hand to the officers. Please ensure all legal transitions are smooth. I'll be using the estate for Healing Hands Africa's new rehabilitation center. The crowd clapped softly. Miriam just sat there, pale and trembling, her entire empire gone. Nia walked past her without bitterness, only quiet dignity. Before leaving the room, she paused and said gently, sometimes life doesn't take revenge. It just reveals the truth. Miriam looked up speechless as Nia walked away, her posture strong, her heart free. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, shining on Nia's car as she drove away. Behind her, the grand gates that once shut her out now opened for her, and closed forever on Miriam's pride. A year later, Nia stood in front of a brand new building painted in soft gold and white. Children's laughter echoed from inside, and the sign above the entrance shimmered in the sunlight. It read, "The Miriam House." People were curious. Why name it after the woman who destroyed her life? Nia only smiled. Because even pain deserves a purpose, she said quietly. The opening ceremony was filled with emotion. Dozens of girls who had survived abuse, abandonment, and betrayal gathered around her, the same kind of pain Nia once carried. Reporters, officials, and community leaders filled the courtyard, waiting for her to speak. When she stepped up to the microphone, her voice was calm but full of power. Pain was my teacher, she began, her eyes glistening. Betrayal was my test. But purpose, that was my victory. The crowd went silent, hanging on every word. I was once told I'd never be anything, that I'd never rise again. But I learned something. When the world pushes you down, you can still choose to stand. And when you stand for others, no one can ever tear you down again. Her words hit deep. People began clapping, slowly at first, then louder, until the whole courtyard echoed with applause. Some cried, some smiled. Nia looked around, at the girls, the flowers, the building that now stood where her pain once lived, and she felt peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge, but from rising above it. As the crowd cheered, Nia smiled softly and whispered to herself, from the girl who lost everything to the woman they'll never forget. A camera flashed. The wind lifted her hair. And just like that, Nia, once broken, now unshakable, stepped into her destiny.